My name is Caroline Stokes, and I am the founder of Forward, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce my very first guest for Get Stoked, Lead Forward, the podcast that's going to be aiming to help people understand where we are today and how we can take this as an opportunity to move forward. My guest today is Darrell West. He is Vice President of Governance Studies at the Brookings Institution. He is also a Senior Fellow in the Center for Technology Innovation. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to speak to him is that he is the co-author with John Allen of Turning Point, Policymaking in the Era of Artificial Intelligence. Welcome, Darrell.
Well, thank you. It is great to be with you.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So I'm going to kick off and ask you the question, because everybody's in a kind of depressing fog and going, where's the opportunity? So I want to ask you, what are you stoked about in the area that you work in?
So I am focused on AI. That's what the book Turning Point is about. And it's an interesting topic because as I have talked with various people, people are really afraid of AI. Like everybody's seen the Terminator movies. People are worried about robots enslaving humanity. And people want to know, is it going to happen in my lifetime, in my children's lifetime, or whatever? So what we try and do is demystify it. You don't have to worry about robots enslaving you, at least for 300 years. There are some more immediate challenges in terms of protecting privacy and eliminating bias, but we try and present a roadmap of how we can turn that technology to our advantage.
That is wonderful. So how do you see? So you're talking about how that can be turned into advantage, but how do you see individuals? So two questions here in one. How do you see individuals and also organizations being able to transition right now?
Well, it's already happening. In our book, we do case studies of AI deployment in healthcare, education, transportation, e-commerce, and national defense. It's also being used in smart cities, finance, many different settings. Like, when you go on an e-commerce platform and you get product recommendations, that's basically AI. AI that's been monitoring what you buy, what you look at, that you don't buy. And what's interesting is the AI is getting good enough that it knows what you want to buy before you do.
That's right. That's right. I remember hearing about the story of a woman that was just getting these pregnancy or not pregnancy, this maternity information coming through. And the AI had identified, this could just be, a joke, but the AI of Facebook was giving her adverts for maternity wear and baby stuff before it happened. I don't know if that's just an urban myth, but that made me go, wow, so there's something there because people have changed their behaviors for whatever reason. So, people still see that AI is, it's a challenge whereby people see that it's the big issue that people are scared of, as you initially said, and it's really important that people understand that it can be used for good. So if we use John Lewis's phrasing, which is my absolute favorite, about creating good trouble, what is it that you're doing to create that kind of good trouble so the policy making, et cetera, is going to be for the greater good?
I mean, the problem right now is the technology is way ahead of the public policy. So what we're trying to do is to educate the policymakers just in terms of how AI is being used, what the opportunities are. And there certainly are lots of ways that AI can help us. It can automate the routine tasks that are boring. But there are a number of problems in terms of lack of transparency. People don't really understand how it operates, issues of fairness and bias. But as with most technologies, there are ways to handle those types of problems. So in a lot of respects, I think our book is an optimistic vision about AI because we recognize all the problems, but we try and come up with solutions to deal with those issues.
What solution? Again, I'm going to use the individual and I'm going to use the company because too often people don't get both sides. What can people do to protect themselves, either from a company perspective, just one thing, because I know that it's a huge topic, but from an individual's perspective, from a company perspective, what can people do?
I mean, the most important thing is to educate themselves just in terms of how it operates. So young people have grown up with this. They were probably less frightened in a lot of respects. They're used to dealing with technology. They've seen a lot of change just in their lifetimes. I think older people worry more because we have grown up in an era of more continuity and less
Mm.
change. And so I think just kind of starting to understand how it operates, how it can
Mm.
benefit people. There are lots of ways in which AI and other technologies can be very advantageous for people. For example, we spent a lot of time in the book talking about autonomous vehicles
Mm.
that are soon going to be hitting the streets in major cities, both in the United States and Canada. Uh,
When? I need to know when.
Well, there's pilot testing that already is going on. They're getting pretty good results. But the challenge in the autonomous vehicle area is it's actually pretty easy to deal with 90% of the driving circumstances, but it's that last 10% that is
Ah,
because
yeah.
humans do unpredictable things, and there are pedestrians and bicyclists and motorbike riders. And so just
Mm.
kind of figuring out how AI should handle the unusual circumstances that take place on the road. That's the
Oh,
challenge in that area.
yeah. So ideally, autonomous vehicles are able to use that. If we use that fairy tale story of the woman being fed maternity information before she knew that she was pregnant, similar kind of thing. It can that the AI in the autonomous vehicles will be able to anticipate these multiple significant situations and avoid it.
Definitely. And, if you think about people who are mobility challenged,
Mm.
people who've had health issues or are older, people who are visually impaired, autonomous vehicles are going to open up their opportunities. Many of these people lack good transportation options now. Autonomous vehicles are going to give them mobility. So
Mm.
the disabled community
That's good.
is very excited about the
Yes.
opportunities here. We're going to start to see them being deployed in the taxi area as well as in the ride
Mm.
sharing business. So those will be some of the early AI applications in transportation.
Very good, and we've all been watching the shows on Netflix about what those either utopian or dystopian futures are going to be like in very serious forms. Which the name has escaped me, but it's we're already been primed on the potential and the exciting aspect of it all. So what do you think from a timeline perspective, because we need to manage people's expectations. I believe we need to manage people's expectations so that they're primed to accept the new reality. So what kind of timelines would you be thinking would be taking place across various areas where we're going to see it? We're going to see it in real life.
The timeline is right now. I mean, it's already
Mm.
taking place. The thing is, people actually don't realize how AI already is being deployed. So, for
Mm.
example, in American cities, a lot of schools are using AI for student school assignment patterns. People are applying to get into charter schools and settings. They have to fill out applications. In the finance area, financial
Mm.
institutions are using AI for fraud detection. In healthcare, we're in the middle of this pandemic. Data
Mm.
analytics is tracking the disease. AI
Mm.
is helping scientists kind of figure out new chemical compounds that might produce either drugs or vaccines. So it's already here and accelerate just in the next few years. And in 5 to 10 years, people are going to be shocked how rapidly it disseminates.
Mm, fascinating. I really like the way you describe it because it sounds exciting. It sounds like we're moving forward in the right direction. Uh, how,
It is
how
it is exciting, but the
mm,
book basically does present these alternative visions, as you presented, of utopia or dystopia.
mm,
And what we argue, the crucial factor in deciding which it turns right now, we've delegated most of these to private companies. They decide what products to develop, when to deploy, to whom to sell it. We're now seeing a techlash against the tech companies, a backlash against the technology. We're going to
backlash.
see more public oversight, more regulation.
Mm.
We need to figure out ways to bend the technology towards human values.
Oh. Music to my ears, music to my ears. And that's what people need to understand, because there is this fear. You're absolutely right. The Terminator days, or, Skynet labs and what have you, where, that something is created. It's already been seeded in here that it is not good since the 80s. So
now, when I talk with people about it, what comes through to me, what people are really worried about is just the loss of human control. And what John Allen and I argue in our book is humans actually are still in charge. Just as when you look at past new technologies over the past several hundred years, often technology comes along, it starts to develop problems, and then we figure out how to regulate it to reduce the problems and to maximize the benefits. We're in the early phase of doing that with AI, but I'm confident we will get there. And so people should feel reassured that the things they don't like and the things they fear, we actually can fix. And we try and provide a blueprint of ways to do that.
Magical. This is the optimism and the positive update that the world needs, because there's a lot of fear about all sorts of things right now. So what would you say is one thing that people can do that they can take away with them from this interview?
I mean, I think what people should realize is the change is going to happen rapidly, and change always produces anxiety, but there are ways that we can manage it. There are ways to turn it to the advantage of individuals, to make organizations operate more effectively. If we handle this in the right way, and if we do it in an inclusive manner, we actually should be able to address many of the problems that people are worried about right now in terms of education, healthcare, and otherwise. So, but the key thing is we have to have the political will to make the choices that we need to make.
Okay, hold on a second. Back up. The political will. You just... Can we talk about
that's a loaded term.
Can we talk about that?
Hey, that is if you talk about things that I worry about, that's the biggest concern I have about the future of technology. Like, I'm not so worried about the technology, because I think there are ways to deal with many of the problems that already are out there. The question is really a governance problem. Do we have the political will to do things that we think we need to do? And that is very much an open question. And certainly many countries around the world are suffering severe governance challenges. Certainly that's true in the United States, a number of European countries, in Asia, Russia. You can go all around the world. Governments are not performing very well. If governments were performing well, I would be completely optimistic about the future of technology. The only thing that gives me pause right now is realizing we don't have good governance. And so that is the thing that could really screw up our future.
Okay. So based on that, because I think that's a tremendously important point, because it's very easy from the majority of this conversation to say, it's in good hands, this is exciting, the future is solid. But there is this very significant elephant in the room, which is that the governance side is going to potentially impact it in ways that may not work to everybody's advantage. But it sounds like the Brookings Institution has got it covered.
We are working very hard. We talk with political leaders and business leaders and academic leaders all the time. So we're out there. We also just started a new technology policy podcast, Tech Tank. Technology policy.
Okay, unfortunately, the online broke up. So you were just talking about Tech Tank. Would you mind finishing that? Just because I think that's actually a very interesting aspect. So tell us more about Tech Tank.
Yeah. So if people want to learn more about technology policy at Brookings, at brookings.edu, we have a policy blog called Tech Tank. And then we also launched a policy podcast, also called Tech Tank. So people can get the latest on technology policy there at brookings.edu.
Inspiring. Darrell, this has been a wonderful conversation. I am so grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.